All right, let's get things started. Welcome everyone to the latest Next Practices weekly session from I4CP. Great to have all of you with us on this Thursday morning, for me at least. I see we have a global audience, so for some of you it's afternoon or evening. I saw people joining from all four corners of the United States. I saw Canada, India, the United Kingdom. Great to have a global audience with us this morning. If you're not familiar with I4CP, we're the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm. We discover the people practices that drive high performance in your organizations. We define that with these four common business metrics: revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. And through our numerous research studies across all areas of HR, we try and tease out what high-performing companies are doing differently than low performers, and really look for what we call next practices, those things that few companies are doing yet. We are a member organization. If you're with one of the I4CP member or companies, great to have you with us this morning. Special welcome to you. If you're not with a member organization, good to have you with us as well. If you'd like to learn more about what membership entails, just reach out to anyone at I4CP or go to our website at i4cp.com and you can learn more about it there. As you can see from this list of logos, this is just a small partial list. There's some very large organizations in I4CP membership like Amazon, Microsoft, 3M, Accenture, and others. We've got a range of industries represented. We also have a number of regional banks, regional healthcare systems, some smaller organizations, and we've got a growing cohort of unicorn startups as well. So again, to learn more, just go out and visit i4cp.com. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and this week my co-host joining me is my fellow senior research analyst, Amber Burton. Good morning, Amber.
Morning.
Good to have you with us this morning. You'll be leading the conversation with our special guest that we'll bring on in just a moment, but a few other quick reminders and announcements from me to get things going. You see here, this is Next Practices Weekly. So as the name implies, we meet every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. You see, we're going to have some great guests coming up from Advocate Health, from Dow, and from Capitolis. So you'll want to register. Once you register, you should get the sessions on your calendar for every week. We do record these sessions. We make the recordings available in a growing archive out on our website. We also make notes available, takeaways, and so on. So they're all out there. If you miss one in a given week, you can get caught up pretty easily. A couple of other quick announcements, and then we'll get to our main event for today. We have an annual conference, an in-person conference in Scottsdale, Arizona each year. It's always in the month of March. This upcoming 2025 conference is going to be early in March 3rd through the 6th. As you can see, you can register now, and if you register by November 15th, you can save $300. This conference is geared towards HR professionals, HR leaders in particular. We usually have over 500 people who attend. There is no expo, there is no vendors at this conference. So it is just for practitioners, just for HR leaders. We always have a wonderful lineup of speakers at this conference, ranging from CEOs, former CEOs, chief people officers at major companies, leaders of DE&I, L&D, talent acquisition, you name it, book authors, thought leaders. We'll be announcing the first batch of speakers for the 2025 conference very soon. So again, be watching for that and register before November 15th to get that pretty significant savings. And then the other thing I wanted to note is, as I mentioned, we're, of course, a research firm, and we do a lot of major studies. Our current one that just launched is in the field, and it's on the topic of workforce readiness in this new era of AI. We've done a lot of studies on these topics in general over the years. We did a seminal study on workforce readiness in 2021. We've done several studies, of course, on AI since ChatGPT went public. And this is sort of merging the two topics together. Do you have a workforce that's truly ready for the future, given all the changes that are coming from AI? So we're asking some questions again. We'll be able to compare data back a few years and see what's trending. And we've got some new questions for you in this one as well. So the link for that is out in the chat. Thank you, Joe, for adding that. Or you can scan the QR code here. It takes about 12 to 15 minutes to do this survey. We would love to have everyone on the call today have your organizations represented in this important research. With that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Amber, to facilitate the conversation and introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome, Felicia. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Tom.
We are so excited for this conversation, and we're going to just jump right into it because we have a lot of ground to cover today. So just to introduce you a little bit more, you have had a rich career as an HR leader, starting with 15 years as a consultant at PwC, and then holding a variety of HR leadership roles at organizations including Coca-Cola, Belk Department Store, Dollar Tree, and most recently, Bright Horizons. So before becoming a CHRO of Boys and Girls Club, you have truly had a storied career, and we want to hear a lot about that career journey today. But the first place we're going to start is by you telling us a little bit more about Boys and Girls Club of America, its unique mission, and a little bit about the work that it does. So why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Amber. And I'm so excited to be here with those on the call. Thank you for joining. When I think about Boys and Girls Clubs of America, I'd love for you to put in the chat, what do you know about this wonderful organization? So if you're a club kid, or if you're a corporation as a partner, or if you've heard of us but don't know a lot about us, I'd just love for you to put in the chat, what do you know about Boys and Girls Clubs of America? The other thing I want you to think about, and you don't have to put this in the chat, but I do want you to think about it. When you think about young people today, what do you think is the biggest challenge that our young people face today? And there's a long list of them. It doesn't matter what background you start with. There's so much that our young people are facing today. And I happen to be blessed with Gen X, Y, and Z in my household. So I hear a lot about it. But one of the things that we try to do at Boys and Girls Clubs of America is we really try to ensure that every kid has an opportunity. Because one of the things that one of my mentors shared with me many, many years ago, talent is universal, but access, unfortunately, still is not. But talent, we come here born with talent. Our mission at Boys and Girls Clubs is to enable all young people, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, and responsible citizens. We also call on the help of folks who are on the call, corporations, our partners, and our donors, because if you're also committed to youth reaching their full potential, we want you to share in that vision and in that model with us. And at Boys and Girls Clubs of America, we actually curate hope. We actually curate these possibilities for all youth who come through our clubs, and we've been doing it for 160 years. I couldn't believe that 160 years we've been doing this. Next slide, please. And here's how much impact we have. You might not have known we have 5,400 clubs across the country, and we have, of that 5,400, we have nearly 500 sites on military around the world. So it's just massive, the impact. And one of the things that makes us so special is that we do try to give every youth that we touch a sense of belonging. Our largest clubs can have as many as thousands of youth coming through their doors every day. But we're also in public schools, we are in public housing, we're in urban and rural areas. So we have a very diverse, a lot of diversity in those 5,400 sites. You probably didn't know this because I didn't know this until I joined. We literally provide access to opportunities to 3.3 million youth, and that's the 2023 number. Of those 3.3, we actually have 1.6 million of those youth who come in. They're actually members. So we don't just require membership. Any youth can come and to partake in our programs. About 2/3 of those youth who come through our doors, they're diverse. And we also make sure, the ones who come through our doors, that they have access to nutrition. But nearly 60% of those who come through our clubs, they also are eligible for reduced price lunch. And then around 30% of them live in a single parent household. So if you can imagine the experience that we give to youth who come in through our doors, and it doesn't matter if they don't have that background, they're still coming into a quality club experience that allows them to tap into their potential. Next slide. For those who love data, thought I would share just, the breakout from an ethnicity. And it pretty much supports what I just said. Roughly 70%, 67% are diverse and the others are not diverse. But we have just an amazing mosaic of youth that we serve across our clubs. Next slide. So people may say, well, what is the so what? We do all of this. What is the so what? And I love working here because we love having data to really prove the value proposition. So 93% of the kids who come through our clubs, they are expected to graduate from high school. That compares to 86% who don't. The life and workforce readiness programs, we're getting kids the skills that they need to actually secure a job and making a living wage. And 95% of our clubs, our teens who come to our clubs, they believe that we're giving them the skills they need for the future. When it talks about health and well-being, that is such an amazing area that we do. We have a whole focus around trauma-informed programming, because we don't know the stories of all the youth who come through, but 93% of them can be assured to get a healthy meal. But we also have in nearly all of those clubs a very intentional focus on trauma-informed youth programming. And then lastly, the good character and leadership. Our club kids, they are very involved in community service. I don't remember the thousands of hours that they get in this, but this slide is just to show you the value proposition is real, and it's shown through these proven outcomes. Alumni. So we have an amazing alumni. If you are a Boys and Girls Clubs alumni, I would love for you to put that in the chat. And if you are so moved, please reach out to me at Boys and Girls Clubs of America, because I'm on a mission to try to gather all the data of the alum. And we have a lot of very famous alums who are part of it, but I just want to get the group that is involved and have been impacted. I want to get that list. So 81% of our alum, they say the club has made an impact on their lives. And Boys and Girls Clubs alumni are more likely, twice as more likely, to participate in nonprofit and community service projects. And they're 3 times as likely to belong to a service organization. So the data just validates the value proposition. Now let's talk about me. I wish I had a drum roll. Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you for sharing that, Felicia. I just wanted to pause and point to how many people in the chat have said that they've experienced the reach of Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And so it truly matches the reach that you've already shared with us here today. But I understand you have a personal connection with Boys and Girls Clubs. We'd love to hear that connection, and then share a little bit about your journey.
Awesome. Well, I wish I could see the chat while I talk, but I'm not capable of walking, talking, and chewing gum at the same time. I haven't figured that out yet. But thank you, thank you, thank you. Please feel free to reach out to me also personally at Boys and Girls Clubs and share your story. But my journey to the Blue Door, this is what we use when we hire people. We have them tell us your journey to the Blue Door, because blue is our signature color. So what I am most proud of is that I am a product of Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I attended the Samuel E. Jones, and it was actually Samuel E. Jones Boys Club. And when Jim Clark, our CEO, interviewed us, and I told him that, he said, how could you have attended that? We didn't accept girls until like 1987. I don't want to tell you my age, but let me tell you, I was in the club a lot sooner than 1987. So I said, well, Jim, they were letting girls in before you kind of got the legal part of it worked out. And me and my siblings went there. So I'm a product of this wonderful organization. I graduated top 3 in my high school. I went to Agnes Scott College, which is an all-girls school here in Decatur, Georgia. I majored in mathematics. Do not blame or hold that against me. I love data. I love numbers. I married my high school sweetheart, and I still like him. And so after all these years, we still like each other. And we had 2 sons and a daughter, and they're all very productive adults, doing their thing. I started my career right after college and a few other side jobs. I started my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers. If you can get a job at a young age at a consulting firm, it gives you the vast exposure to so much. Then I became director of total rewards at the Coca-Cola Company, and that's in Atlanta, and I'm from Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta and Coke wants to hire you, you just say, where do I sign? And so I loved working at the Coca-Cola Company. After that, I became vice president of total rewards at Belk department stores. And then from there, I became vice president of HR for Dollar Tree. And I actually led the HR area for their Family Dollar division, which is a $12 billion division of Dollar Tree. And then I had the wonderful opportunity of moving into the Chief People and Inclusion Officer role at Bright Horizons. And Bright Horizons is a wonderful company also supporting employee plans and benefits at various Fortune 500 companies. And then I got the call from a large executive recruiting agency to tell me about this opportunity at Boys and Girls Clubs of America last February. And then earlier, late last year, I became a grandmother. And that has been like the most amazing new journey that I've started. And I just love working here. What I say to people when they ask me, why did I join BGCA? My response is, I'm a club kid. This is a full circle moment for me to have the opportunity to basically marry up my professional and my personal passion and use my HR experience to help ensure Boys and Girls Clubs continue to have the impact. Who wouldn't do that? It's like I got the best of both worlds, and I'm a product of it. So I'm happy to always talk to people about what this organization can do for you. And it poured into me. And our tagline is "Great Futures Start Here." That's our tagline. And I always tell people, and so did mine. So I love being able to do that. So that's my journey to the Blue Door.
That is an incredible journey. And like you said, truly full circle. I mean, there are so many people here who I'm sure are just inspired by this and who now want to have a career conversation with you after all of those wonderful moves that you made. I think a good place to start here is, why don't you tell us a little bit about how HR is structured at Boys and Girls Clubs? And then we have some questions to dive in past that.
Perfect. This is actually my first stint working for a not-for-profit. I have been in for-profit organizations, the bulk of my 30 plus HR career. And so coming here to BGCA, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, we have what I call a small but mighty team. We're small and lean and we get it done. But even though there's only 10 on our team, we take care of 600 employees, nearly 600 employees who are at the national office. But we're always on call for those 5,400 clubs who are separate legal entities. But if they have a question around any of the areas of expertise that you see on the screen, they can reach out to their regional contact, or they can reach out directly to me or someone on our team. But my team is set up similarly to most HR teams. We have what we call centers of expertise. Some people call them solutions groups. Some people call them centers of excellence. I just say they're on my team and we all roll up our sleeve, and there are some real experts in each of these areas. So reporting into me, I have a VP of talent acquisition and DE&I and talent management. So that top row, that is one VP. And she loves to remind me that she has 3 jobs, but in this organization, that is one leader. Then we have a leader of our HR operations and technology. We also have a leader of our talent development, which I'm going to go a little deeper into some of those programs later today. And we also have a leader of total rewards. Under them, they each have 1 or 2 people who report into them to help us deliver the work. When I first got here, we didn't really have a defined mission, like why does HR exist? Most people think HR exists just to make sure they got a correct paycheck. we haven't done that in a long time, ladies and gentlemen. We exist to be a business partner, although I do want to make sure you get paid correctly. But when people call me personnel, it lets me know they haven't understood how HR has evolved into a strategic business partner. And that's how my team operates and shows up. They are thought leaders, and our leaders are, excuse me, constantly thanking me for us sitting at the table and helping them think through things. And we use data to help get to the best solutions of the business. Our mission is to support the success of all of our employees so that we can enable a strong Boys and Girls Clubs of America. It's just that simple. Some people may say, well, that doesn't sound that fancy. But when you hear about people first, you'll see why that mission is so important. Our vision is to attract and people to come here, develop them, recognize, and retain them. That's probably everybody's mission if you're in HR or if you're a leader. You want to attract people, good people, and make sure they stay. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I mean, your vision, like you said, might sound very similar, but it hits on a lot of the themes that you have already said that you all prioritize at Boys and Girls Club of America. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about why we're here today, which is to talk about your people first culture. But for you all, it really starts with your talent framework, your talent management focus. So why don't you take us through that talent framework first?
Absolutely. So this talent framework probably looks very similar to lots of our colleagues on the call here. Our talent framework is structured in a way to try to say visually how we're aligning to our values and how we're aligning to the culture and how we're aligning to organizational strategy. So that's the intent. It is a very connected circle. You can jump on at any one of these chevrons, but it's meant to show how the nucleus of all of this is the organizational values. Our values are the heartbeat of BGCA. And when I first got here, they were in the conference rooms on posters and those kinds of things. And as I read them, they weren't resonating with me. They just felt like it could be anyone. So my first 3 months here, I did a lot of listening and talked to a lot of people about these values. And in my first year, we were able to recast the definitions. The values are right here in the center. And this framework allows us to say how these values have to actually show up in each of these chevrons, right? So our values show up in our hiring and onboarding because we interview folks. We have interview questions that gives us insight into their personal values to see how they align with our organizational values. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but I wanted to share the talent framework with you first to set the context for future questions.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we're thinking a lot about people first culture right now too. And this is something that you all say, we have a people first culture. Why don't you share with everyone, what does having a people first culture mean at Boys and Girls Clubs of America?
Absolutely. So I want to start with our iCare values. iCare is the acronym for the words integrity, collaboration, accountability, respect, and excellence. So even though I'm not giving you all the definitions, there are definitions for each of these, and underneath that are like probably 10 or so behaviors under each of these iCare values. But when you think about these words, you might at first glance say, well, okay, those are very typical words. But under integrity, we're talking about being authentic and truthful and trustworthy. That's what we're looking for. When we talk about collaboration, we break down silos with this one. Most organizations probably experience silos. Well, this value gives us the behaviors to break down those silos and understand that none of us is an island. And even on my HR team, I'm constantly saying there's nothing in HR that you do in a silo. It connects to each of these COEs. Accountability. Accountability can be misused sometimes, and people will say, well, I'm going to hold her or him accountable. Well, we switched the definition to say, well, technically, let's hold ourselves accountable. Hold yourself accountable. And then if everybody's holding themselves accountable, we believe that it will work out. But if you're just looking to see when someone else does something wrong so you can call them out, that's not really accountability. And that's not also treating people with grace. Respect. The thing we changed on this one is about offering professional respect, but also personal respect. We had a lot of dialogue. Why add the word personal? And I said, well, I can be respected professionally, and I have been professionally respected, but also because of the way I look, I have been personally in corporate America disrespected. So not Felicia adding it, the 100 people I talked to about the definitions, they recasted those definitions and added really key words to bring them to life. And then excellence is about innovation, learning, and continuous improvement. So I didn't have all the definitions because there was a lot of content under these words, but I wanted to start with that because the ICARE acronym is how we took a segue into a people first culture. So I'd like to move to that next slide. So I often get asked, Felicia, what is a people first culture? Before I go into each of these as to what it is, let me just be clear with everyone what it is not. It does not mean that people will always get their way. So I have people come up to me, if I have to say no, they're like, Felicia, I thought you were a people first leader. I am a people first leader. I met you where you are. I understood your concerns and I got some data and I came back with an objective response. In a people first culture, I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to seek to understand. I'm not going to make that decision that might impact you without me really understanding better what's in it for you, what's not in it for you. So people first just means you take a little more time and you're very intentional as you make decisions that you really do understand the end user experience, but also in this day and age, there's so much that people are experiencing. You cannot assume and put everyone in a box. So what it's not, it does not mean that people always get their way. It does mean we are going to seek to understand as we make business decisions, how it will impact our people. But what it also is about for us, it's about the values and behavior. So I can tell you those ICARE values are top of mind. Our CEO, every meeting with his direct reports, he has a segment where we talk about these values. And he's not looking for fluff. He is actually looking for, because we meet every week, hey, what have you done in the last week on your team that brought these values to life? And he has a good BS radar, right? So you can't go on there and just make it up. He wants to hear that you are doing real things with these values. And he does that every time he assembles his direct reports. He also, when we have mass meetings, all hands on deck, all town hall meetings, we start with our values. Every single time we have ICARE value shout outs where people get to put in writing, and we have a fun way that we start that meeting where people are writing about their peers or their bosses or the people who report into them who they see have demonstrated these values. People first culture is also about a positive experience. So if you remember the talent framework, our positive employee experience starts with when a candidate lands on our site and they're ready to apply to a job. I've literally had candidates that we didn't make an offer to email me and say, Felicia, I really wish you all had made the offer, but I want to tell you that was the best candidate experience that I've had. Because even in the candidate experience, we try to take into account that not all candidates are coming to the table with the same tools. So we try to be sensitive to that as we get to know that candidate and create an experience for them that is meeting them where they are. Safety and well-being, everyone's focused on that. I have a whole well-being strategy, and I've even tagged Wednesdays to be well-being Wednesdays. I know it's cheesy, I do, but every Wednesday when we bring everyone together, we are charging them to do something that day to either promote your own well-being And if you really want to be an overachiever, support and enable the well-being of someone else on your team. And I get emails with people telling me, hey, here's how I do it. Safety, we're very focused on physical and psychological safety. Most times I'm in front of any group, small or large here, we're talking about what is psychological safety. We honestly are very serious about it. Our CEO is very serious about it. What is psychological safety? It is the feeling that you can speak up without a fear of retribution, but it's also the sense of feeling like you are heard, seen, valued, and respected. Culture recognition. This was fun because we tended to only recognize the big, the big things. And so now we recognize the small wins, we recognize people via email. We have a whole tool that we recognize. Not many people are using it yet, but I got to fix that. But there's a whole recognition tool embedded in our teams. But there's a lot about recognition, but we also encourage people to recognize their peers. And then at my own team meeting, we go around the table and we ask people to recognize anyone in the room who has done something that made their lives easier in the last week. So creating that culture of recognition, you probably heard Gallup says that people need to be recognized every 7 days. Now, I haven't talked to Gallup in a number of years, but that's what they told me 10 years ago. So it may have become more frequent, but think about it, every 7 days. And I'll admit to you, I'm not that good at that. I'm not that good at that. So I have to put it on my calendar to make sure I'm being consistent in recognizing people on my team and in the moment, but also recognizing how do they want to be recognized, right? Taking the time to understand that not everyone likes to be recognized in front of a big crowd. And then human-centered learning. We're doing a lot in our space of, I would say, just making sure leaders and everyone at the organization understands what it means to have commonness in humanity. So a lot of our training courses are built around building capability on being a good human. And so we just did a training this past Monday called Trauma-Informed Leadership. And it was absolutely one of the best trainings that I have attended at BGCA. And so I had to give kudos to my team because I was a little nervous, like, what is this trauma-informed leadership? But it really opened up a lot of ways you should think about when people are not performing on your team. Admittedly, you do have poor performers. You have people who don't want to do a good job. You do have those. But sometimes you have people who have been going through stuff. And if you don't know that, you might end up making a decision about someone's performance that's really manifesting some trauma that they are going through. And so it just teaches you questions to ask to get to that. And if that is it, that's where you have other tools like your EAP and other tools that we have in our learning system that can help people. So human-centered is about teaching people and building capability to tap into your humanity and actually be open to meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Next
You're
slide.
hitting
Oh,
You're
go
hitting
ahead.
on a lot of the next practices that we're finding in our research at I4CP, just from in terms of how high performance companies mirror their values, how they are, mobilizing their culture. And so something that we really want to know is, how do you encourage your leaders, your managers, your hiring managers to really support that talent framework and to live those values? Can you go a little bit deeper there?
Yeah, I will tell you in the onboarding space, we recently revamped our onboarding experience because every leader was doing it differently. And so in the onboarding experience, we now have leaders who are very intentional about the first 120 days. Sometimes when you hire new people, you put a plan together, but in most cases, you put that plan together and then it goes on the shelf and you do the first week, you get the first week, hopefully you get the first day right. But then after that, it's left to chance. And so our leaders have actually given a great response to us packaging an onboarding toolkit. And that includes getting people positioned for success to do the new job, getting them the training that they need, and going back and training them again, because sometimes that first week or two, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So how do you come back to that before the 120 days is out and make sure? We have a 90-day check-in. That's a part of our performance management where it's very formal that you have to do this 90-day check-in, and you set up milestones for that. When it comes to development, leaders, as part of our performance management, everyone is asked to put their development opportunities by naming their strengths and their opportunities, and they put it in our performance management system. So those are just a few of those ideas to make sure when someone starts with us that we have positioned them for success and not leaving it to chance.
Before we move on to another topic, I just want to check in. Tom, do we have any questions popping up in the chat?
Yeah, we've had a few. Thanks, Amber. And this has been great, Felicia, all along. I know you can't see the chat, but you're getting a lot of kudos, a lot of thumbs up, a lot of people really resonating with the things you're sharing. I think a couple of the questions that have come up or we're going to be covering in what we already have lined up on leadership development and succession. One question, though, from Deepa we could tackle now. Said, just curious, do you measure both outcomes, the what, and the behaviors, the how, in your performance process? A lot of companies are pivoting and really making sure that they're covering both the what, the success, and how they achieve that success during PM.
And I will tell you, yes, short answer, yes. But this is the first company I've worked at that I didn't have to make the business case for that. I came in the door and they were already, our values are 40% of the review. Out the gate, 40% of the review. And those behaviors that I didn't share with you, we have a whole guide that says, well, what does great look like? What does average look like? What does you're not meeting expectations look like? And that guide is so great. But yes, we do incorporate that in our performance review. We also incorporate it in the development plans. So it's incorporated in those development plans, which are also part of the performance management process.
Great. Well, you just teed us up then. We're going to hop right into leadership development. What role does leadership development play in supporting and driving your organization's people first culture?
Well, one of those things I want to share with you all's program. First of all, leadership development, I personally ascribe that everybody's a leader. It's not about your title. That's my personal thing, that everyone is a leader. Whether you choose to accept that, right, that's the opportunity. But it's not about your title. It's about your ability to influence to get and achieve the desired outcome. So leadership development for us starts with the individual contributor. And a program I want to share with you, and we still have work to do on the individual contributors, but a program I want to share with you that actually touched middle managers. So anyone who has a person reporting to them, one or more, they were exposed to this program that McKinsey is the author. Let me just make sure I give credit to McKinsey. Absolute wonderful program. It's called Ability to Execute. And that program touched, several at that middle management. Anyone that manages people, I'm not remember the exact number, but we had 60% of our managers to complete it. We didn't make it required. We made it available. And 60% of those people managers actually completed that program. Next slide, because I want to share a little bit more with you about what that program is. There's a lot on this slide, but we basically started with a kickoff meeting, and that started with our CEO. So this ability to execute is it's a digital program that also has very practical exercises with it. But it started with the town hall that Jim, our CEO, and I kicked off. Then they do a self-assessment. They assess themselves. They also go through the workshops to go deep into the 10 leadership principles that McKinsey has coined under this program. The most powerful piece of this program were these peer learning teams. We probably had, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 15 of them, but we handpicked, well, sort of voluntold different leaders to be leaders of these teams, and they were cross-functional teams, and they had to meet at least 4 times through this 9-month program. But the beauty that came out of this is the cross-functional sharing of, hey, I'm a people leader, and here's the thing that I am facing. Who has faced that? This was so powerful because a lot of people didn't know folks outside of their own divisions because they had never really reached out. They may work with them sporadically, but these peer learning teams created this bond and connection that several of them continued even after the program ended, because they got so much value out of learning from their peers. There's a digital learning piece, and then we also cap it off with a fireside chat with several senior leaders, and then they take the assessment again. So they took assessment at the beginning, then they take one at the end, and we compare them to see and measure the impact of this program. And I'm proud to say that we just had amazing impact. If you go to the next slide, I believe I have some data from some of them. Oh,
Before we do that, I just have to jump in here because I come from an L&D background, and I just want to give kudos where it's deserved here. This is an excellent example of a truly blended learning program. You're using a lot of different learning modalities, which is great for people with different learning preferences. You emphasize the peer learning teams, so the social learning aspect of that, definitely a big deal. But I wanted to also call attention to the fact that the CEO is involved in the kickoff. Not all organizations do that, and I think that's great. And then also the other senior leaders with those fireside chats. Multiple I4CP studies have found that involving leaders as teachers in training programs like this, whether it's leadership development or some other sort of topic area, that correlates to much stronger overall performance. It's a part of having a strong learning culture, and it's not just one study that found that. We've found that now over the years in 3 different studies. Not a lot of organizations, really emphasize that, but leaders as teachers is a key thing. And then you didn't note that the vendor Credly there at the end, but I just wanted to call attention to that too, involving badging at the end of the program. Yes. That's again something that our research has found. We've got many member companies that use Credly or another vendor like that to give that micro certification at completion.
Tom, thank you. And I will say the senior leaders, the SVPs, I don't know, maybe it was the newbie and they wanted to be on their best behavior, but they allowed me to lead their peer learning team.
Wow.
And making
Nice.
themselves vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I was just amazed. And I thought, well, maybe they're being nice because I'm new, but we got a lot of learning out of that. But also the sustainability plan is important. That's another key. Now, whenever we bring all these senior leaders together, we pick one of the senior leaders to give an example of how they've been living and bringing those 10 principles to life. So that's how we have sustained it since that program launch. 2 other programs quickly that I want to talk about is the pipeline. So People First is all about seeing and making sure you create employees for however long you want to keep them. Sometimes we say, well, we want you for life. Well, not everybody we want for life, but we do want to make sure our great people who are contributing here, that they see a path, that they feel like they can grow and develop here. So I want to share 2 programs that we have in place for that. One, next slide, please. One is Leadership Forward. Leadership Forward is our program that targets, I would say, probably the group of directors and senior directors who report into the VPs. And when this program originally started, it was actually in response to an assessment that Boys and Girls Club had done related to the strength of the pipeline, but also the strength of diversity in the pipeline. So this program is 4 years old. It's a 9-month blended learning. It includes assessments. It includes they get an executive coach. They get exposed to senior leaders. The senior leaders who have people in the program also have a very explicit role. And we get clear about that. I wanted to share with you some of the wonderful things that people are sharing about it. People are saying this program is wonderful. It is an application type of program because not everyone gets in. So the good part that we do is we have a board of trustees. So HR doesn't make the selection. We actually sanitize the application so that there's no name or department And our trustees, our board of trustees, we get 5 of them to review all these applications and tell us who, through a rubrics, who they would recommend. And I just shout out to these board of trustees because that keeps integrity in the process. Because sometimes people will say, well, HR just picked the people they know. No, we have people objective who are leaders at other companies being a part of this process. And some of their comments are there too. They are actually thanking me for making them spend more time than they have, but they really get a lot out of their role in the program. But this program is very targeted. It's the 4th cohort. I'm proud to say we actually have 84% retention. So the people who have gone through this program, 84% of them are still with BGCA. And I want to say, I don't remember the percent of them who have been promoted or gotten bigger jobs, but a large percent of them have also been promoted, gotten bigger assignments, and they attribute their ability to be successful to what they got out of this program.
Yeah, Felicia, I mean, this sounds like such a dynamic program, but not only that, just a really fascinating process, including an outside board of directors. I'm sure there are a lot of people taking notes right now, but it's already, scratching my curiosity. What is something that you all are doing to make sure that these leaders and these employees want to stay? I mean, you arm them with great executive coaching, some really wonderful resources. If there's not a promotion that's maybe available right away, how are you keeping them and getting them to stick around a little bit longer?
Well, I just have to say kudos to our board. They're amazing. One of the things we do after they've completed the program, as we do succession planning, which that's my next slide, we make sure that we're being intentional about those people who have completed this program, that they are actually on the bench. So that's one way. And they get I would say, a development plan on steroids if they're on the bench for one of these senior positions. The other thing we have done now 2 years in a row is we give them exposure to the board. We have now, this is the 2nd year we've had a reception. Almost I'll thank you too, because 5 of those board members will give like 20 hours of their time to review it's a lot. I always feel bad, but they give that time to review all those applications. So it's a full circle for them because they then get to meet in person the people, and we take pictures. They get a plaque, they get other things, not just the plaque, but we create an experience around that after they have graduated. Typically it's a year after they've graduated, they get to come and be in the room with the board members and basically get to interact with those board members. So that's been a really positive post-program exercise that we've done now 2 years in a row.
Well, I want to pivot a little bit in our last few minutes together, because something else that's top of mind for everyone, is it's wonderful when we create this great talent framework, when we come up with a great talent strategy that seems to hit it out the park. But then at the end of the day, it still needs to align with that business strategy. We talked about this a little bit, you and I together. What's something that you all are doing to make sure that your talent framework continues to align with the organization's strategy?
So this is near and dear to my heart and probably many HR leaders. I take pride in being a business partner. I love being an HR executive, but what I love about my job is building my business acumen. And so my COO, who is amazing, loves to say, Felicia will invite herself to the party, even if you don't. Like if I know something business related and they think it doesn't relate to people, everything relates to people, I will just say, hey, I'm coming to that meeting. And they are so gracious to say that. So I think in HR, we have to have that business lens and understand very deeply what the business is trying to accomplish. This is a framework that says in an ideal world, which nothing is ideal, but in an ideal world, you got your mission, your vision, and you got leadership. What does that look like at the top, right? That's where it starts. Those leaders have created this mission and vision. It's gotten approved by the board, right? Now we have to come up with the strategies, the goals, and the structure. So leadership, mission, and vision, that is what develops the strategy, the strategic priorities. You might call them big rocks. You might call them initiatives. But what is the strategy, the North Star of what we're trying to accomplish in sometimes 3 years, sometimes 1 year, 5 years? Then that defines the talent strategy. And I believe you either build, buy, or borrow talent. You either buy it by hiring, you build it by building internal capabilities, and you can borrow by saying, we're going to hire a temp. So that framework that I shared with you earlier responds whether you're buying, building, or borrowing, but it informs that talent, defines that talent strategy, and then that informs how are you going to manage talent. That's all the performance management. That is all the development programs that you have out there. That is managing one-offs that happen all the time when it comes to having an effective relationship within a team. But if you get talent management right, that is what delivers the desired results. And then you have to take a step back, learn, adjust, and do it again, but do it better, bigger, and bolder. And that's what strengthens the leadership. So this is a framework in an ideal world. In a non-ideal world, as an HR leader, I invite myself to the business meetings because I know if I'm intelligent about that, I can then help ensure this framework is actually going to have a fighting chance of connecting the talent, because it's all about, have you hired the right people with the right skills at the right time, and they're in the right position and delivering the right outcomes? If you follow that framework, you have a fighting chance of being able to do that.
Absolutely. And I mean, you were just singing the tune of, these days, it does take a different skill set of needing to be a true business partner on the side of HR. And so I think our last question, there's nothing more fitting than to ask for anyone here who wants to one day be in your shoes and they're looking at, okay, what are the evolving skills I need to fully step into that HR, CHRO role? What advice would you give to them?
I literally had this question with a mentee yesterday who is just starting out in HR. And I've always done HR, but if I could start over and do it again, I would actually spend some time in HR, but then I would get out of HR and get in operations. I would get a job in operations, the client, customer facing part of the business. Even if I had to take a step back, I wish I had done that, because that really truly builds your business acumen when the buck stops with you. So I literally gave this advice. You're young in this HR journey. Go get some operations. The other thing is, don't be afraid of AI. If you were at the SHRM conference, you probably heard the CEO there say AI plus HI equals ROI. So don't be afraid to keep advancing your skills. And I literally gave that person that feedback. It's out there. Go learn everything you can about it, and then go get a job in operations, and then come back to HR, because it is so important to build your business acumen. And that's why I'm able to be a good business partner. And I don't just invite myself. Let me make sure you don't think I'm rude. I have built relationships with my peers. They trust me because I listen and I come up with solutions. So because they have trust in me and I took time to understand that, they happily let me crash the party, is what I say. And they never kick me out, and they always say thank you that I came to the table.
That is a wonderful note to conclude on. We cannot thank you enough. And I think ending on trust, especially as it relates to HR, is the best place to be. So Tom, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks again, Felicia.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you so much, Felicia. That was a wonderful walkthrough of so many different aspects of what you're leading, you and your team leading at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. You've gotten a lot of kudos and thanks coming through in the chat throughout the session. And I'm sure there's more that'll be coming through here as we close. So thanks again, Felicia. It's been a great conversation. I just want to close by noting that all of our Next Practices weekly events each week are available for recertification credit hours with both HRCI and SHRM. So if you have a certification with either of those organizations, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID or grab it here from the screen. Joe has put those in the chat, so you can do a quick copy paste. I also would encourage you to reach out and connect with Felicia on LinkedIn. We always encourage folks that attend each week to connect with our guests. It's a great way to stay connected with these outstanding leaders in the HR industry. So once again, thank you, Felicia. Great conversation today. Thank you, Amber. Outstanding job today facilitating. Look forward to having you back again soon as co-host with me in the future. And thanks everyone for participating today. Hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend coming up. Bye-bye now.